Hello, everyone. I am here to share with you all about poetry that'll make it more exciting. Anyway, let me introduce myself first. I am Mildred De Hoya Par, and I'm also a teacher by profession. Since I'm teaching senior high school, grade 11 and 12, on subjects like literature, creative writing, research, and all other English subjects. I'm into poetry because I joined poetic platforms um, since the last 3 years. Yes, I'm connected with some poetic platforms, and somehow I've got a lot of interviews from different countries, and I'm also into anthologies. Yes, my works has been published online and offline on some magazines and newspapers like in Bangladesh, in India, and some other countries. I also have some contributions on some anthology books on Seychelles, Tobago, China, UK, and some other countries like US and also other countries. Anyway, because I'm into poetic platforms, I also have my own, I also founded my own poetic platform, but it's not so active right now. And its name is Emerging Society of Arts and Letters. But currently, I'm into submissions of poetry daily into a lot of poetic platforms. That is where you're going to enhance your knowledge and skills in writing poetry. So, since I've introduced myself, I let me continue with my discussions about poetry. First of all, what is the function of poetry as well as other literary matter for that matter anyway? So it is always dulce et iutil. When we say dulce et iutil, it means it's according to Horace, a Greek writer. It means dulce or sweet and util use. So according to Horace, we always have two main functions of literature. That is to the sweet functions or to entertain, and the other use to inform, to hand down some knowledge about it, or introduce a whole lot of information. So it's both sweet and use function. So, how do we develop our knowledge of poetry? First of all, you have to read. So, all the knowledge we gain is through reading because it was in a written form. Therefore, we also have to first read the different authors because you can learn from them the variety of writing styles and also how to write most interesting poetry and how to write efficient, amazing ones. Okay, so since poetry is unwritten form, therefore we must learn how to read first before we are able to write. But then again, we also have to know how to read proper poetry. So we do not only read silently, but we also have to learn to read, to recite poetry. Okay? And another one, the second thing that we have to remember when we want to be skilled in writing poetry is learn how to play with words. And playing with words, we have what we call pun. Pun is having fun with words. So, for example, these are sometimes words with double meanings or a play on word. For example, when you are at a watch store, you say, do you have time? So when you say, do you have time? That means that maybe the lady, you are asking the lady if she has a time, or maybe you're asking about the time in the watch. Okay. And then, for example, the word measure. So the word measure, you can say measure the dimension or the preemptive measure or the precautionary measure. So there. And then many other applications of the double meaning of words. Anyway, so the next is we have to remember that also we have to develop vocabulary words because if not, then what are we going to use in our poetry? Because poetry is basically made of out of words. So there. I also would like to share with you in Jabberwock written by uh, Dutch Sun. And it's like the Looking Glass or Alice in Wonderland. In that book, there is a poetry about Jabberwock. And let me share with you some lines. "'Twas brillig and the slithy toves did Garen gimble in the wave. All mimsy were the barragubs, and the movie rat a grave." Anyway, so it seems that they are nonsense, but if you come to think of it, they are portmanteau. They are portmanteau words. When you say portmanteau, it's like an attache case wherein you have two case over there. So it's a combination of two words actually, like smog, smoke, and fog. And here it's a combination. So like Garen Gimbal. So it's a combination of two words actually. Another is like brunch, breakfast, and lunch. So you can play on words and actually create your own words, but make it properly used in your poetry. Next is what we call sound and sense. When we say sound and sense, you have to mean what you say. For example, let me give you this example. In the works of Edgar Allan Poe, and the poem he said, or the poem entitled The Bells, there's a line there. To the tintinnabulation that so musically wells, keeping time, 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 in a sort of runic rhyme. You make it sound like the time sounds like really the time or the chiming. Another would be bells, 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 bells. So there, the bells are in compound or in two words put together as if they are the sounding of the bells. Another one an example would be with Emily Dickinson. Like the title is A Narrow Fellow in the Grass. Goes like this: A narrow fellow in the grass occasionally writes. You may have met him, have you not? So there, the sound there of the sound seems like the sound of a snake because it pertains to snake or a serpent that is slightly going on in the ground. So whenever you speak out or recite the narrow fellow in the grass, it seems like you are a snake emitting the S sound. A narrow fellow in the grass occasionally rides. You may have met him, have you not? Anyway, that's sound and sense. So whatever sound is, that's also the meaning or the sense of the word. Next we have, this is what I like, literary devices. So what are these literary devices? Sometimes they are also known as literary techniques or a slight difference between literary device and literary techniques. When we say literary devices, some of the examples would be like figurative language, another would be imagery and juxtapositions and some other like allegory and paradoxes, but these are some of the examples. So let me give you an example about figurative language. So we have figurative language like simile, metaphor. So we know that already. And apostrophe, personification, hyperbole, onomatopoeia. So these are some figurative language. When it comes to imagery, imagery produces like mental pictures. So when you utter a word, then it gives you an idea of the different senses. For example, when you say visual, it gives you an idea of what we see. For example, when I say the green, green grass in the horizon, therefore, it means like even if you haven't really seen the picture of it, it creates a mental image of the green, green grass in the faraway horizon. Then we have what we call auditory. When you say auditory, it is a word that creates an image of a sound. For example, the tingling, the sound of the bee, the buzzing of the bee. So it's like onomatopoeic, the neighing of the horse. So it's just the sound, but then the description of the sound makes you understand or make you create the sound within your ear or your mind's ear. Next, we call it olfactory when we are dealing with words that pertains to the sense of smell. For example, there's a difference between the odor and fragrance. When you say odor, it's the odor of the garbage. So it's foul. But when you say the sweet smell of the jasmine in the morning, so you can imagine the sweet smelling of the flowers. Next, we have what we call gustatory images. When we say gustatory, is it refers to the sense of taste. For example, what if I tell you the juicy lemon or the sound of crispy lechon? Somehow it creates an image that tickles our palates. And then also, another one is kinesthetic, from the word kinetic or kinesthetic. It refers to the movement, like the kids are hurrying down the corridor, the kids are running down the corridor, or the rats or the mouse are scampering because of the coldness. It gives us an idea of the rats going to and fro and very much disturbed because of the coldness of the night there. So, another one, we have what we call tactile. When you say tactile, it refers to the image of the touch. So, it's either you slap, mm, and you say slap, mm, you can imagine the harsh, the harsh touching of the skin, or you can say caress. When you say caress, it's soothing. It's a kind of soothing touch, or the pat on the shoulders. So that gives us an idea of that kind of touch. Okay, so again, those imagery have visual, auditory, olfactory. We have the gustatory, tactile, and kinesthetic. Now, another kind of literary device is juxtaposition. When we say juxtaposition, we are putting the word juxta, which means side by side, and position. So it's kind of words that are put side by side that heightens the opposition. It's a binary opposition. When we say binary opposition, we are talking about two images that are put side by side to highlight another. Let me give you an example. Um, he felt so small in a city so big. So the image of a person feeling so small in the city so big. So the small and the big. So there, uh, juxtaposition. And Let's move on to the next one. So that was literary devices. Let's move on to another one, and that is poetic forms. So we must understand the different poetic forms if we want to write poetry. The basic of which was all about the verses. So stanzas are also known as verses. And for example, we have one line, we call it monostage. Two lines is couplet. Three lines, tercet. Four lines is quatrain. Five lines is quintet or quintillios. Six lines is sestet. Seven lines septet. And eight lines, it is an octave. So when we put together, these are lines that comprises a stanza. For example, if we say we have two quatrains, then therefore we have two four-line poems. And for example, a haiku is composed of three lines and with a 575 syllables. Okay, so and when we talk about the poetic form of a sonnet, then we have two kinds of a sonnet, by the way. In English sonnet by Shakespeare, we have what we call a three quatrains and one couplet. When we say three quatrains, that will be four, 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 having 12 lines plus two heroic couplet or two lines. So that makes it 14 because sonnet is always 14 lines. And then we have also the other one, which is Italian sonnet, which is created by Pat, uh, Francesco Petrarch. Actually, that was the origin of a sonnet because Francesco Petrarch had written the sonnet for his loved one, which is Laura. But his was six line and eight lines, which is called, or eight lines and six lines, which is called an octave plus sestet. Octave, octave having eight lines and a sestet having six lines. That makes it also 14 lines. We have other forms like villanelle, terza rima. We have also vignette. Vignette is like some story, which are very short story in the form of a poem. And we can also, what do you call this, play with different kinds of lines or number of lines and make it poetic form. So there are too many to mention. I cannot recall them all of them right now, but there are too many. And we also have limericks. We have also the other one. They are somewhat humorous in form, so and then involves the name of a particular person. I cannot recall right now. Anyway, the next one is always like this. You know, when you begin to write poetry and you don't know yet how to begin, just try. Even though you feel that your words are too simple, just write. Because from there, you're going to somehow accumulate as you go along writing. You accumulate words and you try to play with it. Soon enough, you will be contented with it because nobody starts with really very good poem, and that's why there are poetic platforms for you to begin with. And there you can try to scribble a line, and they're going to review your works, and you will find out how to improve. So I'm suggesting that you join a poetic groups, and there are many of them. Mine again is Emerging Society of Arts and Letters. So there are many challenges or, a prompt. By the way, with prompts, it may be in the form of a picture or form of words that will trigger you on to write a poem. And sure enough, they'll give you certificates if you win. Sometimes there are joined like 300s are going to join in. And when you win the first award, surely it's very honor, it's very much an honor on your part. And it's so rewarding to win an award. So you try, okay? And just write, just scribble, because from there you will learn. You don't have to be good. When I started with one group in motivational strip, they got like very many members already, thousands, I guess 13,000 for that matter. During the time that I joined, I tried to scribble my own poem. I would be laboring it. I took pains on writing my poem. And you know what? Nobody likes my work for like a week. Nobody even liked, nobody even loved, nobody even reacted to my poem. But soon enough, I win an award. I win a lot of awards, I tell you, because somehow I experimented. I tried to join some contests, and you'll gain a lot of knowledge by doing poetry. Just right. Finally, you have to edit, edit, edit. Because the first time you write, it's just like scribble. But as you go along, you try to uh, rearrange your words. Maybe it will result to something good. And you play it by the ear. As soon as you are done with your work, you try to read so that you will find out whether it's good to the ears. So basically, you do not just write to be read. You are going to write to recite. And that's what I do also. I recite together with people from different countries. Most of them India, Bangladesh, Nigeria. There's also Greece, Italy, UK. So, and you're going to gain conference as if you have been there in their countries. And it's so exciting and fun to join them. So I hope you soon join. Okay. So let me go over the some of the suggestion I'm saying. So when you do poetry, you don't need to be good right away, but you try to write. So first is you have to read to be able to learn the certain varieties and structure of poetry. Just read, read, read. Next, you have to play on words, okay? And how to play on words. Gather vocabulary, increase your vocabulary, know how to expand it, like the use of prefixes, the use of compound words, the use of idiomatic expressions also are needed, and of course, the use of simile and metaphor, uh, comparisons. So, for example, her face is like a, her hair is like a wire, okay? She is as tall as, something like that. So simile is the use of like or as in comparison with some things, and in metaphor you directly compare two things or two unlike things. Her hair is like cascading waterfalls. That's simile. But when you say her hair is an evening full of glitters, then that's metaphor. Okay, so sound and sense. So you mean what you say, and whatever is on your written word, then it should mean something. Literary devices, some of which are the figurative language, juxtaposition, or putting two images side by side. We also have imagery, or the different senses that can be felt, or the words used to create a mental picture. For example, like imagery, visual, auditory, tactile, olfactory, gustatory, and kinesthetic. Okay. Another is the knowledge of the poetic forms. The poetic forms are the way by which the poems are arranged by lines, by rhythm, by rhymes, So we have limericks, sonnets. We have. Uh, I also learned from them Sino by uh, Kamlal Pokhrel. So an Indian named Kamlal Pokhrel devised the Sino, and I learned it from him directly. And we have an anthology entirely created for Sino, which is a new form. So anybody can devise a new form. So sonnets and elegy and ode, and elegy is all about grati- what an elegy is all about the dead. So they are like giving praises to the dead. For the ode, it's giving praises, exalting a certain thing. That's praising, like aggression urn. It's an urn of the dead, and it says there that the dead is a great leveler. Okay, next thing is just write. Just try it. So you begin from somewhere and finally edit, edit, edit. And in all this, you have to learn to tap the muse within you. As they say in the beginning, in the classics, they used to have the invocation of the gods. When we say invocation of the gods, this is like praying to the gods of poetry. But actually, they are just fiction. They have this imaginary gods on whom they pray. So they develop the muse within them. They develop the inspiration to write. So when we say the muse, it could be a person, it could be a thing, it could be a word, it could be anything that develops that inner desire for you to write. Actually, is gathering inspiration. So when they say invoke the gods of poetry, there are many. There are nine muses of poetry, each for different topics. But as for me, I invoke my God of poetry. I invoke my muse. I look within me, and sometimes it is a person I admire. So when I look at his writing, oh, he writes about this. And somehow I took from it, I have a prompt. It may be a picture that inspires you, so that will be your muse. But they say is like the one that you're so in love with that gives you the passion to really write and write and write. So when we write, do not think yet of having produced a very masterpiece kind of work. You start from simple and join groups, join us. And you can join my group and you can follow, and it will lead you to a lot of groups. So it can also earn you uh, inclusion in some anthology books. But I hope to produce my own book. Maybe this year I have to produce my own book. When you become a poet in the platform because you're writing every day, then soon enough you're going to develop your own book. And all writers wanted to have their own books. So I hope you look towards that direction. I hope I somehow motivated you, because being a writer, you gain a new world, you gain friends, a lot of them, and you gain a lot of friend poets, and you know communication with them is gives you a vast world. Okay, and mostly writers, like in my poem, you have it like writing poetry is an advocacy, because you also give a wider perspective to some people on your audience. So sometimes they said poets have a lot of lives because you put yourself on somebody else's shoes and write, write. So there are writers who are for sublimity. There are writers who are for opening the eyes of the public about some issues. There are writers who are for poems, and there are mostly love poems, but really writing is gives you power because you somehow usher people into a new idea. You entertain them. Again, that's Dulce et Decorative. So I hope I give justice to your time in watching, and I hope you'll learn something from it. As for me, I'm so passionate about it that I can tell you so many things why I've fallen for doing poetry. Just write, just write, and soon edit, edit, edit. So there. Again, this is Mildred De Hoya Par saying, just write. Writing poetry is an advocacy. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Bye.